Okay, let's dive in. If you've ever felt like you're hitting a brick wall in a conversation with a parent, then you know exactly what we're talking about today: parental resistance. It's a daily, sometimes hourly challenge in our work, and it can leave us feeling so stuck and worried about the kids we're trying to help. So, in this explainer, we're going to unpack some really powerful research from Forrester and his colleagues that gives us a whole new way to understand and maybe even change this dynamic.
And you know what? Ubiquitous is the perfect word for it. This isn't something that just pops up with a few difficult families. No, this is a core part of our practice. It shapes pretty much every single interaction we have, and it's absolutely central to the work of child protection.
So here's our game plan. We're going to break this down into 5 parts. First, we'll nail down what resistance actually is. Then, we'll dig into the 5 main reasons it happens. After that, we'll look at our own role in all this, introduce a really practical toolkit, and finally, we'll tie all that theory back to our day-to-day practice.
Right, so what are we really talking about when we use the word resistance? As the title here suggests, it is so much more than a parent just saying no to something.
Now, this definition is incredibly broad, and for good reason. Resistance isn't just a slammed door or another missed appointment. It's also that apparent cooperation that masks issues. I think we all know that feeling, right? When a parent is nodding and agreeing to everything you say, but you get this gut feeling that nothing is actually going to change. Being able to spot that kind of passive resistance is a seriously vital assessment skill.
So why does resistance happen in the first place? This framework is super helpful because it breaks it down into 5 main causes. It helps us move away from just labeling a parent as uncooperative and start asking the much more useful question, why?
And just look at the range here. We're talking about everything from massive societal factors and the very context of our jobs, all the way down to a parent's internal struggles, denial, and yep, even our own behavior as social workers. It's a really complex issue, and we have to understand all of these layers.
This first one is so important. We don't just walk into a family's home as a neutral person. We walk in representing a system. And if a parent has spent their life dealing with discrimination, whether it's racism, classism, you name it, they have every single reason to be wary of us as figures of authority. Their resistance might not even be about us personally. It's about what we represent.
The second cause is just the context of our work. I mean, just imagine it. Someone who has the power to remove your child is coming to your home to assess your parenting. That fear alone is going to create a massive wall of defensiveness. And the third cause is what's going on inside the parent. They're often fighting these huge battles with shame and ambivalence, which are just gigantic psychological barriers to change.
Let's just pause on this word for a second. Ambivalence. It's absolutely crucial. A parent can want, more than anything, to be a good parent, and at the exact same time be completely terrified of the changes they need to make or feel totally hopeless. It's this internal push and pull, this feeling of being stuck between 2 powerful, conflicting emotions that often shows up on the outside as what we call resistance. They're not just fighting with us, they're fighting a battle with themselves.
The fourth cause is denial, which the paper calls almost omnipresent. And while it's often a way for parents to cope with their own shame or fear, it's also what directly gets in the way of us being able to assess risk. Honestly, this makes it one of the most dangerous and difficult challenges we face when we're trying to keep a child safe.
And that brings us to the 5th cause. Now, this is probably the most uncomfortable one for us to look at as practitioners, but it's also where our greatest power to actually create change lies.
This question right here, this is the game changer. It asks us to shift our focus away from seeing resistance as some kind of character flaw within the parent to seeing it as something that happens between us and the parent.
And there it is, the bottom line. Our own communication style can either pour gasoline on the fire of resistance, or it can be the water that puts it out. If we go in with a confrontational, judgmental style, we're almost guaranteed to provoke defensiveness. But a different approach, well, that can build a bridge to engagement. Resistance is co-created.
So, if we're part of the problem, how do we become part of the solution? This is where the paper points us towards something called motivational interviewing, or MI. It's a method that can fundamentally change the entire conversation.
This chart just lays it out so clearly. On the left side, you've got all the communication traps that, let's be honest, we can all fall into. Blaming, confronting, pushing our own agenda. That's the stuff that builds walls. And on the right, that's the MI alternative. Empathy, open questions, affirmation. These are the tools you use to build engagement.
Let's really zoom in on reflective statements for a minute, because this skill is a game changer. A parent might say something like, "He's just being a boy. He gets a few bruises." Now, our first instinct might be to argue, right? To correct them. But a reflection sounds more like, so from your perspective, these injuries aren't a major concern right now. See what that does? It doesn't mean you agree. Not at all. It just proves you've actually listened to them. And that simple act can de-escalate denial and start to build the trust you need to make any real change happen.
Okay, in our final section, let's bring this all together. Let's see how understanding those deep causes of resistance and then using these new communication skills can create a much more complete and effective approach to our practice.
So here's the big idea. Effective practice isn't an either-or thing. We have to be able to hold both of these truths at the same time. We need that sociological lens to understand the structural disadvantage and the deep mistrust a family might be bringing to the table. And we need the psychological communication skills of MI to build a real relationship with them in the room, despite all those barriers. It's about combining the macro with the micro.
Ultimately, this research completely reframes how we should think about resistance. It's not some obstacle we have to bulldoze. It's feedback. It's information about our interaction. And the key thing to take away is this. While we can't control a parent's past or their internal struggles, we can control our own approach. By changing how we communicate, we have the power to change the entire dynamic. And most importantly, create safer outcomes for children,